to be, where the ideas came from, how it's being implemented, the good, the bad, and the ugly of all projects. What's going well? What would you change? What are you learning about? And thinking about ways we can take this project and bring it to other parts of the state potentially, or amend it, change it a little bit to fit our different needs. The exciting part of the project to me is that we're really honing in on some culturally relevant crops. And I think we have a lot of opportunities in that space with the different communities that we might be part of or communities we work with. So I am excited to turn it over to Claire and Nellie.
Well, good morning. I'm Claire Thorne. Nellie, you want to say hello before we get started?
Hi, I'm Nellie Rowland.
We're very thankful that we could be part of this discussion. Just as a precursor to this, we had to add or ask for a 1-year extension. By the time we got our funding, it was too late to purchase the seeds that we required for our farmers to get started. So just to share a little bit, before we knew about this SARE grant, I was already looking to grow some African heritage crops in the botanical garden. We have 8 community raised beds, and that's where this has happened. This year, it also got expanded to the 4-H youth garden to give them some exposure to African heritage crops and why there's a value in providing diversity in our food system. And so between the 2 sites, we have similar crops growing, and then we may have a different variety growing in one garden versus the other. Nellie, do you want to add anything else at this point, or do we want to just jump right in?
I think we're ready to jump right in.
Okay, bear with me. This is my first time doing this presentation, so here we go. So like Denise mentioned, everybody can see the screen, right?
Looks good.
Fantastic. So as Denise mentioned, the grant that we were made aware of is the SARE Partnership Grant. We were officially awarded the grant in January, February of last year. And so at this point, we had already selected specific farmers to help with the grant. So basically what they will do, we have 2 urban farm sites in Cincinnati and 1 urban farm site in Columbus, where they will choose the African crops that they would like to grow, and then they will see those through production, through harvest, and then hopefully for sustainability purposes, gather seeds so that once these crops have been exposed to the Ohio climate, that hopefully we can continue growing them in the Ohio region to make foods available. Again, the diversity of foods, particularly for cultural groups who may find themselves coming to America as far as being an immigrant or a refugee. And then if these farmers can make these crops available, it makes it like a piece of home for them and comfort. So with that, this is the picture of our botanical garden entrance, and I will just quickly point out that the large tree in the upper right-hand corner is a 350-year-old chinquapin oak, which is no longer standing. The windstorm that came through here Friday took it down. So I will just cherish this slide because at least we've got a portion of it in the picture. All right, so you might wonder if how this project got started, and it really was from, now it's not going to advance. There we go. Here's a delay. It really started with a restless, sleepless night that I got up and turned on the TV, and there was a PBS special on Percy Levon Julian, and he was a chemist who took the plant chemicals from the calabar bean and helped develop medication for glaucoma. So I was like, wow, here's a person I hadn't heard of. He's using plants to advance medication. So that began my journey of wondering what other African Americans have had an influence on agricultural practices. Of course, we have some well-known um, inventors and advocates: George Washington Carver, Booker T. Washington, who was instrumental in getting the Morrill Act of 1890. So for those of you who may not know, Central State is an 1890 land grant university. We just received our land grant status in 2014. So we are really, as an extension and land grant university, we are just at the beginning of what we hope to be able to accomplish. So onward with my journey, I said, well, these are significant African Americans who have had an impact. What other current day African Americans still have an impact? And so it just really began. I started finding a lot of other significant people, which I'm not going to go into here, but I do want to point out two things. The Jessup wagon that George Washington Carver, he designed this. This is the true sense of mission, of extension, is going out to the communities with research information. So I believe he is definitely our first extension agent and educator. And we just got to continue in his fashion. And then Henry Blair's corn planter gave way to our current day farming implements like the combine to harvest corn. So because of Henry Blair's invention, we want to give him that credit. And I don't know that this information is really out there. So that's what intrigued me. And I do have student workers who help me and will help present on this topic. In fact, they did at OFA last year, if any of you attended that. They themselves are not agriculture majors, but they have taken a strong interest in the project that we're growing. So the experience they have had so far, really, the grant hasn't begun. We were trialing these things, and while we were waiting, had other seeds available, so we just kept it going. So I can successfully say, I can't touch things, that we have been productive with our crops. But before I get into this is just the gist of our grant. We were 23 out of 39 proposals that was selected for this grant. Again, I mentioned Cincinnati sites and Columbus sites will be utilizing our African American urban farmers. Basically is to produce culturally specific and significant crops here in Ohio, and for sustainability purposes. And of course, as we know, the availability of local produce has been an issue of having people have access to it. And, to have something perhaps shipped from Africa, if it can be grown here in Ohio, look at the cost and the carbon footprint we're saving in that respect. Of course, we know foods are fresher, they taste better, the nutrients are much better. So basically, what we're doing with this is seeing again and testing and trialing that the farming partners can determine that viability, productivity, and sustainability. And I can say, from what I have done, I'm not out there in our botanical garden or the 4-H garden on a daily basis. I'm not out there monitoring every, hour of what's happening. So I feel that this will be a successful adventure because if what I have been able to produce with the help of my students, then I know that our farmers should be successful as well. And so we said here beginning in late May or April, we were hoping that would be this year. They'd start the seeds. Obviously, it's going to be next year. We need to purchase our seeds no later than January because when April and May came around, the seed sources were no longer available. So we know we have to work ahead in this case. So the first year, as we were just finding out about the grant, not even writing the grant yet, because this would have been in April or May of 2023, these were the seeds that I more or less had an interest in growing. And again, we utilized 8 well, we utilized, I think, 5 of the 8 raised beds, and not knowing if these crops were going to germinate, if they were going to produce, we kind of planted really heavily, much more than what we should have. So some of the crops had some issues because they didn't have the proper space. We had some issues of, a rabbit coming along and eating the goosey melon and the watermelon. We don't have any protective fencing around the raised beds. But with the first year, we were really successful with most of these crops. There were a few that had some issues. One of our okra type that we were growing, the seeds must have been just bad. So we replanted with a hybrid. It wasn't truly one of the okras that I would have chosen. Our water leaf didn't really do well last year, but this year it is doing super well. Our speckled swan gourd, well, my students love to water and water and water. And well, apparently gourds don't like to be all that wet. So as soon as the fruit would develop, it would fall off the stem. So I just contributed. It was too much water and maybe not enough sun in that site. But these are some of the plants that we were able to grow. The iron and clay southern bean peas and whippoorwill. My student workers built the bamboo trellises, and we saved enough seeds from the whippoorwill that we were able to distribute them at our OFA conference, along with some of our other seeds like sorghum, um, definitely our amaranthus. We were able to share quite a few of those seeds. The red burgundy okra is one of the choices that the farmers will have to grow. There's another one that we grew this year, and I'm really excited, and we'll see that one in just a few moments. That's the motherland okra. The fish hot peppers, the striped toga eggplant were very successful. We had a visitor from Nigeria. She was an extension educator. And when she saw all these African crops growing in Ohio, she was so thrilled and excited that, our horticulturalist, he, said, oh, well, go ahead and pick some. So she picked at least, I know, the eggplant and took it home that evening to make soup. But she was just super excited to see crops from her homeland growing here. And I'll just tell real quick, our goosey melon up here in the upper right, we had already had a freeze. And so I harvested it. We possibly could have left it go a little longer, but I'm not certain. These seeds are not mature, so we weren't able to save these, but we did at least produce them. So we know that it can be done. And this is basically the garden plan. These beds are just under 4 foot wide by 8 foot. So you can imagine a couple of the beds were really well overpacked. but that was trial and error just to see if we would be successful. So moving on to year 2, again, we've been very successful with our fish hot peppers. This year was the first time we were able to grow our Odell's white watermelon. It is a light-skinned watermelon with white seeds and a light pink flesh, very juicy and sweet. We had our last sample today as we welcomed new staff, so that was pretty exciting. So just out of curiosity, I wanted to weigh each melon just to see our weight compared to what I've seen on the website from the seed source. She had shown a 22.9 pound watermelon. Our largest was 12 1/4, down to like 6 pounds. And so now we've counted out the seeds per melon, and we're just going to play with numbers to see if a certain weight watermelon produces X number of seeds. It may not be all that relevant, but just something fun for my student workers to have a twist with their daily work activities. Our whippoorwill southern peas, at this point, we have gathered 5.3 pounds. Much more significant than last year, to where basically what we changed, and we'll see this in the next slide, we only put 1 crop per raised bed. So the southern peas are still producing. So we'll probably maybe get close to 6 pounds. We are having one of our colleagues with our family and consumer sciences folks. They're going to try to prepare now the beans along with the fish hot peppers with the agouti, or not, excuse me, not the agouti melon, but the garden egg plant to create a soup of some sort. The okra here that I mentioned is the motherland okra. We don't have enough that we can harvest. I did eat one, but this okra is a short, fat okra. And I was told it doesn't quite produce the seeds. Well, it does produce some seeds, but maybe it's the viability of those seeds. So any okra that are going to develop in this bed, we're going to save those seeds to see if they'll be viable for next year. And then this year we grew the garden eggplant. Again, you're supposed to be able to eat either or of these raw like an apple. I did that with the striped toga, and no, it was very bitter. And the educator, she said, yes, we call those bitter balls. And I understand why. This garden egg, kind of the skin was bitter, but the inside kind of resembled a taste of a cucumber. So here's the plan. Other than the greens, we combined a few things in that one bed, but the fish hot peppers had their own bed. The garden egg, the whippoorwill southern peas, and motherland okra all had their own space with basically 2 rows within that space of plants. So we did have, just to say for viability purposes of the whippoorwill southern peas, we had some volunteer plants come up in a couple of these other beds. So hey, they survived the winter months and germinated themselves. So I think, again, this is going to be a productive crop for our farmers to try. So just to give you an idea, these are a few types of crops that we are trialing. Hopefully in the future, we'll try others. And gosh, the idea that we can grow these crops in Ohio has just really surprised me. And I will admit, I do grow my own vegetables, but never have gone, say, for these type of what would be exotic to us. And typically some of these would only be grown into the southern US. So being that we're successful in Ohio, really happy to see their success. So Nellie, do you want to chime in on this part?
Yes, I sure can.
Yay.
So I was asked to help Claire with the grant, which is the first time ever writing a grant and helping put everything together. So it was a learning experience. But when we talked about seeds, I'm kind of a nerd about genetics, especially with animals and plants. And I'm like, this is it. This is where we can kind of learn. Can we grow these crops in Ohio? Can they adapt? And are their offspring, the seeds, grow even better in Ohio? So I was just like nerding out. So I was like, this is awesome. So some of the outcomes and impacts we are hoping for and expect for this grant is the partner successfully propagate African heritage crops in their locations. So we do have 2 Cincinnati and 1 Columbus. And also harvest the crops to take to market and sell. Some kind of medium outcomes and impacts. Successfully saving the seeds. We definitely want to see if we can save the seeds that are viable, and are they going to germinate again next year? And are they going to be better than their parents? And determine which crops will do well in Ohio. So there are some crops that we are going to try and it might not going to do well in Ohio. So kind of weeding out the crops that are going to be well in Ohio climate, because everyone knows Ohio weather is very unpredictable. And so long term, we're hoping this provides diversity in the crops in marketplaces. For local people, immigrants, and refugees, there's a lot of them in Cincinnati and Columbus. So we're hoping some people will be like, oh my God, I remember this when I was little over where I'm from. And so, and not having to ship that stuff over here, which just costs a lot. So it's kind of exciting to kind of add different diversity crops to the marketplace. Some other ones are providing data. So that's kind of where I'm like the nerd on this. Like, I want to know the whole data, what happened, the germination rate, harvest. And so that's going to be happening next year because this year wasn't a full season. So the numbers would just throw everything off. So we want a good growing season. So we're going to start taking numbers next year and the year after that. And then develop a educational garden in the Seed to Bloom botanical garden. I think that's gonna be awesome. And especially for the people there at campus can learn about agriculture came from everywhere and anyone. And so them learning like where everything came from is exciting for me. And I think the 4-H kids really enjoyed that, working with the heritage crops in their garden as well this summer. So that is the outcomes and impacts we have for this grant. Hopefully next year when we have the first full year of growing season, it's going to be amazing.
I'm going to
Okay,
break in with a question quick. So that
sure.
in the chat. Yeah. So you may be getting into this later, and that's okay. Tell us if we're jumping ahead, but opportunities for other people to participate in this or outreach to kind of share these seeds. I know you did an OFA conference presentation, but what else have you done and what else is to come?
So right now, because we really haven't started the grant, we're kind of holding seeds close to our hearts because we want our farmers to be able to have their input and success stories shared. The goal, yes, would be maybe eventually, if we're successful, that these seeds would then be made available, being that they're already adjusted to the Ohio climate. I mean, there are seed sources out there. I may not reveal what they are at this moment, but I just did a Google search myself, and that's how I found these seed sources. And these seeds are for sale through seed preservation groups. You're not going to find these seeds on your typical, burpee seed site or whatever other seed companies. And that's the relevance to this is that we're trying to provide that diversity once again, and that these are heirlooms, and if you're planting that monoculture of one crop, if something comes in and wipes it out, then we're out. But here there's that diversity of greens and beans, and why not make them available? Nellie, did you want to share anything else on that regard?
Yes, so when we was giving opportunity to do this grant, we had some people suggest these farmers, and that's who we selected was the three farm sites. And ever since this grant we got accepted and pretty much word got out, I think everyone's like, oh my God, why didn't you ask me? And it's like we didn't know what we were going to do with this grant in the beginning. So in the future, I think there's going to be opportunities to add farmers to the grant to get even more data, because again, that'd be awesome to get different regions in Ohio, because like I said, Ohio weather is unpredictable, especially in different regions, the northern, the southern. And so I think in the future, I think we would like to get opportunity to connect to other farmers in different regions to get that data. But for now, I think baby steps. I think if we don't take too much, we can't chew. I feel like the numbers are going to be more accurate. And then once we kind of get okay, we got this, I think we're definitely going to outreach to other farmers for trials.
Right, because Nellie and I have also discussed a potential extension of this. And at that point too, we might be able to invite others to come in. So Nellie has been approached. I have been approached by other farmers. And I mean, people are really excited about this project. And, we want to give Central State the credit. First of all, because another factor about Central State, if you're not aware, we are an HBCU, which is a historically Black college or university. And that was part of the reason we really wanted to focus on African heritage crops, because it would relate to our student body and our alumni and our faculty members. So yes, once we get our feet wet and getting things going, the potential out there for other farmers to join in would be fantastic, because why not provide this diversity of food to people? Because I'm not of African heritage, but I love food. You show me how to cook something or share a recipe or share a dish with me, I'm going to try it. So I'm excited just to have something different within my own menu to prepare. But let's move on, because I don't know, I'm not watching the time. Cassie, I'm assuming you'll let us know.
Oh, you're
But
good. I always want to pause for questions. So
okay, well, no problem. Interrupt anytime. Okay, we paused too long. Oh, oh, well, guess what? We're at the end. Perfect. This is just our non-discrimination clause, as most universities provide. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing. And we would welcome any other questions that you may have. Wow, we've had a lot of people join in since I last saw this screen. Hello there, Julia Lynn. And I never
Yes,
said,
I have a brief comment.
yes, ma'am.
Just that I'm starting a gardening in the diaspora course at the Wexner Healthy Community Center, October 10th. And it will
Okay.
include a lot of information. It is in person, it's not Zoom. So it's really for Columbus folk.
Okay.
But it will focus on African heritage crops, the transfer of indigenous knowledge from Africa to the Americas, as well as the crops that grow well in this particular area. So you can contact me or check the Brownsville Growers Market site for further information.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing that, Julia Lynn.
And Julia Lynn, feel free, and anybody else too, if you have an exciting opportunity coming up that other people on the conversation might be interested in, please feel free to drop info in the chat, whether it's just contact me for more info or if you have a link to an event. This is a network, so it's a great opportunity to share what you're doing.
I don't have the link now. Maybe I can send it to the CSU team. But we also we're also very concerned about the pipeline and making sure that there are youth aware of opportunities in agriculture. And we have, as part of the Spark Summit, we'll be hosting a Green Teen Summit at Franklin Park on Saturday, October 19th. I believe that's the date. It is free. We've got space for 100, youth. It's tweens, middle school, and teens, high school. So please, I'll share that information. And if people know of any teens who would be interested, just get them over there.
Thanks, Julie Lynn. Sharonda, I see you've got your hand up. Do you have a question?
Yeah, sorry, my screen kept running away from me. First off, I want to say thank you for this, because this is so important to have cultural foods. What's interesting is, myself as an African American, we eat different foods than some African Americans in other regions. My family, my mother's side is from Virginia, and my father's side, North Carolina and Florida, and we're not spicy food people on either side, just as far as cooking at home. So it's interesting how, you talked about the spicy peppers, but I am addicted to many sweet peppers, and I have gotten many African American teenagers addicted to many sweet peppers. and, and I say addicted because they're like, oh my God. And it helps to keep them regular. And I always tell people, I don't care if you're black, white, fat, skinny, short, tall, rich, poor. The only thing we all have in common is all having to move our bowels. And that's the only thing they tell us not to talk about. And when I've spoken to my young people, and they've told me in the past they would go for 2 weeks without going, I'm like, what? And so just, and they're like, why are you so energetic? I'm like, because, I eat many sweet peppers and I poop every morning. And they're like, what? So when I introduce it to them, they're like, oh my God. They come in the classroom, and I don't mean to be gross, but I'm gonna talk for real. They say, oh God, Miss Allen, let me tell you about my doo-doo this morning. And I'm like, yes. And they're like, I feel alive. They're like, I can't believe nobody ever told me this, because nobody wants to talk about it. They can't share it with anybody because it's supposed to be so gross. And it's just like, these foods, like all these healthy foods, just culturally, we need to make sure, because peppers are extremely healthy and good for you, good source of vitamin C, all that good stuff. And so knowing that, I bought that to them, and then of course seeing this is like, it's just so enlightening and invigorating. So I thank y'all for doing this project. And I actually have my own garden. I wasn't able to grow okra because when we were able to get going, it was already too late. But my little watermelon just started growing, which is weird because I'm in New Jersey with USDA Zone 7A. It's supposed to be too late for watermelons, but it's the cutest, prettiest little watermelon. And so, and so it's just like West Africa. I was looking at the map and I'm like, oh yes, like it's so beautiful to focus on cultural foods and just the value of it. So thank you so much. And I'm in New Jersey, but I always participate in y'all stuff because for many years, even before the pandemic, I would go up to Ohio for the Black Farming Conference. And I couldn't go this year. I was very upset about it. So I missed all the good stuff. Anybody got any spare stuff? Please send it to me. Cassie, thanks.
Well, thank you for those comments. I mean, we're really excited about this project. And again, providing that diversity of foods. I know, Sharonda, there is an event in Maryland put
Yes.
on. Are you aware of that one put on
Yes.
by Ujama Seeds?
Yes,
In that
I
group?
am aware. I am
Okay.
aware of that one, but I think, what is that, the 19th, right?
It's sometime here in October. I think it's actually the 26th because it conflicted with my
Oh,
schedule last year and this year. But I think
oh.
that would be a phenomenal event to go to. And since you're in New Jersey, I thought I would mention it.
Yeah, well, that's the problem, only because the people in the community where my garden is insisted on having the Halloween garden farewell event on the 26th. I knew it was one of those weekends. And so I'm really
Yep.
upset because I wanted to go because I have some of their seeds, the Ujama
Wonderful. Yeah.
seeds. Yeah.
Right. That is one of the seed sources, people. I just let the cat out of the bag.
I'm sorry. Because they're organic, and it's like, culturally they have the certain strains of the different
Right.
plants. They have the different types of okra and stuff. So
And the collard greens. They do a project
yes,
on collards. So
yes,
pretty intense group to be in contact with.
yeah, because I'm growing collards, various types of collards, kale, Siberian kale. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's good stuff. I wish I could go. So thank you. Oh, and somebody said Black Urban Farmers and Gardeners National Conference, November 1st to the 3rd in Houston.
Ooh,
Ah,
Yeah,
that was
thanks for
wonderful
dropping that in the
because
chat, too. These are great connections to continue the interest in this conversation. Now, Nellie and Claire, as you continue working through the grant, and like lots of our projects, we start what we think is generally small, and then we realize all the opportunities and more opportunities present themselves, as you told us about. When you do have programs, presentations, news, opportunities, all that, especially like a presentation or opportunities to come to the botanical garden or maybe even field days at other farmer sites. I don't know what the future plans are. Will those be posted through the extension online calendar system that was recently launched?
we we'll be having field days with our farmers, and we will be promoting them in some fashion. I'm not certain if they'll hit our calendar or not. Sometimes that's hit and miss, but we'll do our best to, share those dates, because we'll be inviting uh, participants to come to the farmer's property to see what they've done, and then to give the farmers an opportunity to share their experience with those who show up.
Excellent. So if there's stuff that's happening, we do our network here. We have a large email list that we send opportunities, especially ones that connect with past presentations and interests of the group. We are happy to share that out as well. I also
Fantastic.
just mentioned everybody that Central State just recently launched a new online calendar of events. It's a new system, but I just dropped the link. The vision is that once you set yourself up in that system, you'll be able to look and see what's happening anywhere in the state, but you can sort it for the region of the state that you're in right now. It is a new system, so all of us are learning how to use it, but I think it'll help us connect more. So we're less likely to have the surprise that we're like, wow, I just heard about this. Why am I just hearing about it? We're working to better connect as well.
That is the goal.
So just, I don't know, comment, question, both. We've been experimenting with okra here at Ohio State and some of our high tunnels, and they seem to be doing very well there. I think it allows a little extra time in the growing season. We can control the heat a little bit more, which I understand it needs. Any plans to kind of check that out, or have some kind of covered system in the future if that's needed to kind of extend the growing season a little on these crops?
Well, we're finding that the motherland okra does require a longer season. So, that what we've been able to experience so far, those are going to be pointers that we'll share with our farmers. I probably won't do it here within the botanical garden. We will have a research plot on our research farm that one of our other researchers will be helping trial some of these seeds too. I don't know if that would be a method he might use. We can definitely share that with him. We are successful this year with our speckled swan gourds. And I know those have done really well for the summer. And actually, within 65 to 80 days, we had very nice size gourds already forming. We do actually, Sharonda mentioned a watermelon. There is still one little one out there in the 4-H garden. I don't know if it'll be well enough to be harvested, but you know, anything that we can share from our experience so far, the farmers will be able to benefit from that.
Or maybe it's an opportunity to start them early indoors and teach that
Right,
skill.
right. And some of our farmers may that can be the supplies that we get for them as well. So we provided a list of equipment that the farmers could choose And if they're not choosing what we supplied, the cost in that for, we can put that money towards something like a small hoop house or something like that. So
I have a question with the you mentioned taste testing, which that was really interesting to me because at my beginning farmer site, we opted to grow some African heritage crops as well, and then learned that we had questions about what to do with them, how to use them, a lot more than expected. But yeah, can you talk about what the plan is for the taste testing, and maybe even reintroducing the crops to community?
So which crops have you tried, Denise?
Well, okra, our group is really good at growing okra, like more than we could handle because we didn't
Which
have enough people that
variety?
were interested in it.
Which variety?
Not one of the heirlooms,
Okay.
space, but just trying to reintroduce some of these
Mm-hmm.
foods to the community, and learning to grow them as well. And then in general, the dark leafy greens, more broadly, not specifically always collards, but the broader dark leafy greens. Those were the two that we found that we could grow really well, but we didn't
Know
have the
how to,
demand for them
yes.
or the familiarity.
So the idea is that our FCS, our Family and Consumer Sciences team, will get involved with how to prepare these foods. We've got some connection to our African cultures in Cincinnati and in Columbus, that they're willing to work with us on preparing foods. And then what we hope to do is then to provide like recipe cards to know how to use these foods, because I know, even when I was in Florida, there were various crops that, hey, I'm an experiential foodie, let me taste it, tell me how to prepare it, but I need to know how. And so that's what I found was lacking at that farmers market. So the goal is with these farmers is that they'll be able to provide that kind of information. And like I mentioned earlier, our FCS team is going to prepare the whippoorwill southern peas, the garden eggplant, along with the fish hot peppers. And these fish hot peppers, they're hot, but they're not super hot. So it just really depends on your tolerance for heat.
They're not ghost
Yeah,
pepper.
yeah, so I can bite into one and whoop, okay, it's a hot pepper, but it's not like those ghost peppers that will do serious harm to me anyway. But yeah, so we hope to be able to share recipes with people to know how to prepare the foods. And I
Thank
think
you.
Deborah had her hand up. You're muted, Deborah.
Yeah, sorry. Very, very interesting project. Great idea. My question concerns how the your seeds are being raised. Are you using organic methods, or are you needing to use some, protectants, and just, what's the actual, agronomics management of some of these crops that you're experimenting with?
So for what my experience is here at the garden, because it is a food crop, I will only use organic methods for growing. This year, we did encounter a little bit of damage to our whippoorwill pea pods, and we're thinking the likely culprit is the brown marmorated stink bug. They were not in the garden last year. They were not at the 4-H garden last year, but they made their appearance in both spots this year. And CSU campus, we are surrounded by corn and soybean. So once, of course, I became aware of it, one, we're late in the season, we still had a good harvest. But I immediately started hand picking the bugs off and squashing them and doing those kinds of methods, or dropping them into a bucket of soapy water. I did use some in the beginning. I did use some BT or spinosad, which are organic means for control. Early in the season, we had the vegetation being, more or less attacked, whereas in the fall or later summer, it was more the pods themselves. So, but there was some damage, and so that's another thing to monitor. Nellie, do you want to add anything else about treatment?
Yeah, so our farmers, our 3 farm sites, I'm pretty sure almost do organic. That's another thing we're going to require them to take note of, is anything they use on the crop. So I'm like 90% sure all of them are organic, so they only use organic methods, like picking the bugs off by hand or using organic products. That's something we're going to require for them to let us know. If they're going to use something non-organic, we need to know, because that might affect our plants in some way. So that's the data we're definitely going to require them to note and give to us so we can keep track on that.
Thank you. Thank you. Good luck. We look forward to hearing you come back.
Yes.
Thank
next
you.
year. Yeah.
With recipes.
Yes.
That's been fun for me, growing the okra. Everybody I talk to here on the Worcester campus is from different places, and they're all like, "Oh yeah, I love okra. My mom used to make this dish." It's been fun talking to people about that. Great way to connect.
I mean, that's the whole other thing. If this project is going to connect, because it's food related, and that's all something we all have in common. We have to eat, so let's learn from each other and share recipes and try new crops.
Other questions? This has been delightful. I love this project, and yeah, it's just really, really fun and neat.
Well, thanks again for the invite, and Denise for mentioning it to include us, with your group for a presentation. And anytime y'all have questions, I will put our contact information back up on the screen. If you have any questions, both Nellie's and my information is here. We'll be happy to chat with you and go from there.
And I will say this topic, and part of the reason why